Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7 o'clock main news. In tonight's headlines, the Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs meets with the resident coordinator of the UN Development Programme on the end of his tenure. Yemen's exiled government declares the city of Taiz a disaster area and urges the international community to intervene. Lebanon's cabinet holds an emergency meeting as protests over trash collection turn into street violence. And Turkey's president appoints Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu to form a new interim government. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uruguay, Tabary Vazquez, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uruguay, Tabary Vazquez, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mbarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable of congratulations. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defence Sheikh Khalid Jarrah Al-Sabah met this morning at his office with the Danish Minister of Defence Carl Holst and his accompanying delegation on the occasion of his visit to the country. The ministers discussed issues of common concern, especially in the military field, and praised the depth of bilateral relations, as well as the keenness of both countries on strengthening and developing these ties. The meeting was attended by the Chief of the Army's General Staff, Lieutenant General Mohammed Khalid Al-Khidr, the Defence Under-Secretary Jassar Abdul-Razak Al-Jassar, the Deputy Chief of the Army's General Staff, Lieutenant General Abdullah Nawaf Al-Sabah, Assistant Chief of the General Staff for Operations and Planning Authority, Major General Ahmed Abdul Wahab Al-Amiri, and Assistant Chief of the General Staff for Intelligence and Security, Major General Abdul Rahman Eid Al-Hadhoud. Earlier today, the Danish Minister of Defence and his accompanying delegation arrived at Kuwait International Airport, where he was received by Lieutenant General Mohammed Al-Khidr and Major General Ahmed Al-Amiri. The Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs, Sheikh Salman Sabah Hassam Al-Mahmoud Al-Sabah, met with the resident coordinator of the UN Development Programme, or the UNDP, Mubashir Riyad Sheikh, on the end of his tenure. During the meeting, Sheikh Salman lauded the resident coordinator's effort during his term in Kuwait for enhancing cooperation between the UNDP and state institutions, especially the Ministry of Information and Ministry of State for Youth Affairs, and for achieving the concept of sustainable development on the media and youth scenes. For his part, the UNDP coordinator congratulated Kuwait on the first anniversary of the UN honouring of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah as a humanitarian leader and Kuwait as a humanitarian centre. The UN official said Kuwait represents a role model for cooperation with the UN, expressing appreciation over the country's support of humanitarian and developmental work and alleviating the people suffering around the globe. Yemen's exiled government declared Taiz a disaster area and urged the international community and the UN Security Council to intervene to stop the bloodshed. The city, Yemen's third largest, has since April been ravaged by fighting between Houthi rebels on one side and government loyalists backed by Saudi-led airstrikes on the other. The coalition fighting the Houthis doubled its near-daily airstrikes in the central province of Marib and the adjacent border area of Jauf in order to allow allies on the ground to push north towards insurgent strongholds. Officials said Marib's pro-government forces also received major reinforcements, including hundreds of troops, ambulance and armoured personnel carriers aimed to take Sada, the main northern stronghold of the Houthi rebels. As Iraq attempts to curb rampant corruption and streamline the government, Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi continued his efforts to support the reform drive. Meanwhile, hundreds of Iraqis gathered across the country demanding government reforms, jobs and services. Our correspondent in Baghdad, Rihab Arikabi, has more details in the following report.
In response to calls of the public masses for a civilian and technocratic government, Iraqi Prime Minister Dr. Haider al-Abadi has announced the formation of a governmental committee of experts and consultants to oversee the sacking of unqualified high-ranking personnel in ministries, independent commissions advisors, etc., and their replacement on the basis of merit, with the aim to cut staff redundancy and spending. Hereafter, there are around 4,000 special advisor and director job vacancies, and the committee is believed to have put criteria for the filling of the vacant positions with skilled professionals away from sectarian and party quota system. The committee members will also follow up and assess the work of ministerial advisors and the directors to ensure an effective management of the state. Yet, critics have suggested that Abadi's step will eventually dive into party affiliation.
Iraqi Prime Minister's measures will not cut much of the government spending, and the formation of such committee to fill the vacant top government positions of advisors and directors will face increasing criticism and accusations of nepotism and selecting and appointing candidates based on party loyalties and not merit.
In line with Abadi's anti-corruption reform push to revisiting old and current corruption cases, Iraqi Prosecution General has declared that there are 1,166 convict recovery case files since 2003, which were issued by Iraqi courts against convicts who escaped outside the country, many of whom are senior officials in the government.
Iraqi courts have issued verdicts against escaped corrupt officials since 2006, but the predecessor governments have not built a strong justice system. But today, Iraqi government determined to curb corruption and pursue old and incumbent corruption cases.
Earlier this month, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi proposed a 7-point plan to fight corruption through scrapping top government posts and curbing privileges as a part of ambitious reform drive sparked by swelling popular anger over corruption and poor governance. Abadi has already dismissed 11 of his 33 cabinet posts. That was the first concrete step in a reform drive to curb corruption and streamline the government. The widespread corruption has sparked month-long nationwide protest, and Iraqi people have spoken their minds and have demanded to bring the corrupt officials to justice and to improve the government services, warning that any attempt to observe their anger through launching false promises will only worsen the situation. The public anger appears to heat up in case the reforms remain merely austerity measures. Reporting for Kuwait TV, Rihab al-Rikabi, Baghdad. In response to calls of the public masses for a civilian and technical...
Lebanon's cabinet held an emergency meeting today in its newly fortified headquarters over protests over trash collection spilled over into street violence and calls for the feuding government to resign. Beirut-based activists held 2 large rallies over the weekend and a smaller march yesterday over uncollected rubbish, reflecting long simmering anger about government incompetence and political corruption. The protest organisers have called on Lebanese at home and abroad to join them in a large rally on Saturday. Meanwhile, the Army Commander General Jean Ahwaji said the armed forces would protect any peaceful demonstrations but wouldn't tolerate security violators or infiltrators who sought to sow sedition and chaos. In a move to solve the crisis, Environment Minister Mohammed Al-Mashnout earlier named 6 companies that had won waste management tenders in Lebanon's different 6 regions, but the announcement did little to appease the protesters. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan appointed Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu to form an interim government today that will lead the country into a new election. Erdogan formally called a new election yesterday after the deadline passed for forming the government, following an inconclusive vote in June. Davutoglu has 5 days to form a temporary cabinet, which would include opposition party legislators to oversee the polls. However, 2 main opposition parties have already declared they wouldn't participate in the interim administration. A statement released from the president's office didn't say when the election would be held, but the president has previously said it was likely to take place on November 1st. In Afghanistan, a series of large explosions at a gas terminal on the edge of the western city of Herat killed at least 11 civilians living in a camp for people displaced by war. The overnight explosions, which were felt across Afghanistan's 3rd largest city, left 18 others wounded. It wasn't immediately clear whether the explosions were an accident or the result of an attack. French President François Hollande said that his country should be prepared for more attacks, such as the thwarted assault on a high-speed train last week. Hollande said that Friday's incident could have degenerated into monstrous carnage without the courage of the passengers, including 3 Americans and a Briton, who subdued the gunman. Meanwhile, judges were likely to decide whether a Moroccan suspect who was tackled by fellow passengers on the train will be charged with attempting a terror attack. Prosecutors in Paris were expected to announce later whether they are seeking judicial investigation into Ayoub al-Hazani or requesting an extension to his police custody. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, was meeting in Vienna to discuss how to finance the monitoring of Iran's nuclear deal with world powers, a crucial step towards an eventual end of sanctions on Tehran. IAEA Chief Yukiya Amano announced today that the UN nuclear watchdog has asked its member states for more money to carry out its role under a deal to curtail Iran's nuclear program. Amano called on member states to provide the IAEA with the money it needs for ongoing work in Iran and said the €800,000 per month it had already received would be exhausted by the end of next month. The agency will need an additional €160,000 per month in the run-up to the implementation of the July 14th deal, which is expected early next year. And moving to local financial news, the three main indices of the Kuwait Stock Exchange were positive by the end of today's trading session, with the price index gaining more than 19 points to reach 5,834 points. The KSX 15 index also put on 1 point and settled at the level of 930 points. The share of Investors Holding Group Company was the top gainer of the day, while that of Icarus Petroleum Industries Company suffered the biggest loss. The 10th Cultural Summer Festival, entitled Kuwait International Humanitarian Centre, has been and continues to draw in large crowds due to its culturally colourful nature and its compelling dynamics. During the summer festival, 5 short Kuwaiti films were recently screened at the Cinescape Layla. Young Kuwaiti artists produced a range of films that address diverse local and social issues through their respective films. Our reporter Ghirma Jabouri brings us up to date with the story.
Kuwaiti artists recently had the chance to showcase their filmmaking skills to a wide audience, giving them further exposure in the film industry while offering cinema lovers an entertaining night at the cinema.
Yes, I'm very proud that we are producing now Kuwaiti short films, and they are very famous directors. And actually in cinema department, in the Cultural Council, we are encouraging our youths. And those generations, we are very optimistic about them in the future of Kuwait, especially in cinema. So we have to encourage them. So I decided to choose a Kuwaiti night rather than any countries.
My film is called Al-Mahfadha, which means the wallet. It's mainly talk about when someone lost his wallet and he thinks that someone else stole it from him, and he go to him aggressively and start attacking him without rethinking or reconsidering. Maybe it's lost, it's forgetting. That's what it takes. And usually, on meantime, most the youth here in Kuwait, they go to the violence. Usually, they go to and they don't think before they act.
The films that were screened included Attached to Mother, produced by Othman Al-Jafar, Between the Lines by Muhammad Mhaitil, The Wallet by Ahmed Al-Kadairi, The Passage and The Beginning, both produced by Badr Al-Husseinain.
I'm very impressed because I actually grew up loving the cinema. I actually grew up loving the movies, and my dream is to create my own movies, my own stories. Even I was dreaming to be in Hollywood, which is, I think, is going to be a long way dream, but at least we're just going to start here in Kuwait, creating short films, and especially the low-budget films. And because the last days or the last years, we think that creating a movie is going to need a budget, it's going to need a lot of it. Now we can create a movie even in a smartphone, that you can use an HD camera and you create your own movie. So yes, I'm really impressed. I'm very happy to see all the Kuwaiti directors tonight, and that really pleased me, and I'll thank Cinescape for giving us the chance to show our movies and our projects on the big screen.
Well, I don't really watch Arabic movies. I'm just here because I'm curious on how Kuwaitis act and stuff like that, because I don't really watch Arabic movies. So I'm pretty curious to see what they have in store for us. I love Arabic movies, and I support Kuwaiti movies, in fact, because we don't have many, but that dramatic movies usually give you new impression as to what Kuwaitis think and how they act and what they really are, not from what the media tells us.
Upon exiting the cinema, spectators explained that watching the films was a delight and that they felt proud to see Kuwaitis produce and direct great films and portray ambition, creativity and talent through art. The summer festival continues on and continues to impress, delight and entertain a large audience. Tonight, 4 short Kuwaiti movies were screened, bringing much joy and happiness to the audience. From Cityscape Layla, I'm Gena Jaburi reporting to you for the English News.
Thank you, Inwa. And for a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. The Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs meets with the resident coordinator of the UN Development Programme on the end of his tenure. Yemen's exiled government declares the city of Taiz a disaster area and urges the international community to intervene. Lebanon's cabinet holds an emergency meeting as protests over trash collection turn into street violence. And Turkey's president appoints Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu to form a new interim government. Thank you for joining us.